30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25.
It's time for reaction. Welcome in. Old School Nerd.
Hey everybody, it's Old School Nerd, and yes, we're just a little over a month and a half away from seeing SABATON live in Austin, and yes, we are technically counting down the seconds, but that's not what this video is about. Today, this video is about SABATON releasing the brand new video, Steel Commanders. Now, this is a dual event with Wargame.net, where they are doing a World of Tanks event with a brand new Class 9 Ultra Tank and crew members with the band in there. For this video, I know that Tina Guo is going to be a part of it, the cellist from Swedish Pagans. Those who've seen that video, that was amazing. She fits in perfectly with the guys. Now, Steel Commanders is about tanks, specifically World War I to end of World War II. Now, SABATON can go anywhere with it, so we're going to watch this together. Ready? Yeah. Oh, and I'm doing subtitles. You're welcome. Check us out on OldSkuleNerd.com. It's got all of our social media posts, the Patreon link for those who want to help support the channel, and the merchandise store. Let's go. SABATON, take it away. It's almost like they're throwing a curveball at me. It's like, wait a minute. Why is there a knight? Because they'll go back that far too. We know that. But I think they're referring to armor. When you're talking about tanks, you're referring to armored warfare. I was in an armored division, 2nd Armored Division, which is, yeah, hell on wheels. Our patch was right here because that's where Patton's widow requested from Congress that the division patch be put over the heart because it was close to her husband's heart after George Patton died. Doesn't matter for this. But yes, armor has always been the king of the battlefield. When we went to World War I, if we get a chance, I'll explain to you what I'm talking about, the advent and why tanks even exist. It was a particular thing that was invented right at the turn of the 20th century that actually made it necessary for us to replace horses and cavalry with tanks. We'll get to that. Here we go. Ooh. That was awesome. So the knight puts his sword in, and now he's a sentinel on the battlefield. And the battlefield could be desert, tundra, it could be sand. It could be even the whole garden with the vines and flowers. Also, when you saw SABATON walk in, Tina walked in with him. You can't really miss her. She's dressed like the boys, but she ain't one of them boys. Oh God. And she brings a particular sound to their just heavy metal. You know, they do this power metal kind of feel, and she just brings that light. Just it's not an acoustic cello, it's kind of an electric cello. So it kind of does give that epic feel to it. We're not even a minute in. Let's go. All right, this is World War One. Okay, you could tell by the way the tank is designed. I don't know if which one of these it is. Please do not quote me. But the British kind of really started it, and the Germans were behind. Uh, the reason why this was really the last time that cavalry was used, horseback, as the heavy um, instrument of destruction in military circles. The advent of the gun really changed the thing, but in the turn of the century, right at the beginning of World War One, the advent of a properly high cyclic or rate of fire machine gun became evident. So at the beginning of World War One, it was quickly found out that because now both sides of this war had extremely high rate of fire machine guns, that the thought of lining up in square blocks of soldiers and marching at each other and cavalry running in and shooting at each other from it's not going to work. Literally, it throws a storm of lead, and if you're not taking cover, you're taking damage. And it was not going to work out. So there came the great stalemate, years of trench warfare, where trenches were dug, barbed wire, emplacements, and artillery barrages back and forth with really nothing to show for it except for the complete destruction of the landscape. And even though they were jumping out of the trenches and running at each other, most of the time they were just complete slaughters because there was nothing really to counteract the machine gun. So the tank was designed. The idea of the tank was threefold. Number one, it could traverse the trenches because it was so long with the tread size. Number two, it could transverse the barbed wire and obstacles because, again, the tracked vehicle could just walk right over it, not get entangled like a wheeled vehicle could. But most importantly, it was armored. So machine guns, for the most part, could not penetrate the hull, which would protect the soldiers inside. A lot of early tanks were literally just troop carriers. They had this top right here that they would put canvas over the top. And they would load up a bunch of guys in here and they would come jumping out of the back, or a lot of times troops would follow behind closely to avoid machine gun fire. But this was the way they were able to counteract the stalemate that was caused by the machine gun. Later on, it progressed. Because when we get to World War II, then we had another problem. We'll talk about that when we get there. Let's continue on. I swear I didn't watch this video first, and the lyrics are telling you exactly. Oh God! But hey, at least I was right. It's not the hood. All right, he refers to Patton. Myself, being a member of the 2nd Armored Division Hell on Wheels, that was General Patton's. Here we see the Sherman tank. This was the Allied version in World War II. It was an exact opposite in theory to the German theory of how tanks should be. These things were also referred to as the flame box. Extremely lightly armored. It protected them from standard artillery fragmentation and machine guns. But the caliber of cannon on almost every German tank was completely capable of piercing the armor of the Sherman. But we had so many of them, and because they were lightly armored, they were extremely fast. So that was the theory behind it. Now, they did modify the Sherman later with a higher powered and a larger caliber cannon after the invasion on D-Day to counteract the armor of the Panzer tanks. However, they did realize that by using swarm tactics, 5, 6, 10, 12 Shermans swarming a German tank, they could position themselves either to the sides and behind the tanks, because fighting a German Panzer tank front to front was never a good idea, because the Panzer tank was so heavily armored in the front. There are old videos that you can see of film that was taken where shots from Shermans are just deflecting into the sky off the front of a German Panzer. The key to the victory for the Allies was the speed upon which they were able to swarm and the numbers. When you make a giant, huge tank like the Germans are doing, it takes a lot of material. They're also very slow, and they take a lot of power and a lot of fuel, and Germans were lacking in a lot of it after a while, whereas the Allies was just a freaking machine. The trick of the trade was to shoot for the tank track treads, to disable it to where it couldn't move, and then swarm it. Also, if you could position yourself to the rear and get a shot into the engine compartment, you could disable the tank. They would also try to shoot for the gap between the turret and the superstructure. A lot of times that wouldn't work, because you're hitting a target that's about 3 inches from 100 yards. Not really a good idea. Plus, Germany quickly altered that with the Tiger tank, where nothing but the rear was really the rear and the tracks. That's the only way you're slowing it down or stopping it, and that's it. Scary thought. But anyway, let's continue. Okay, if you're again, I was gonna say history buff, but the last time I said that, I got screwed over by the hood. Or I'm sorry, not the hood. They're talking about chieftains, centurions. These are the British tanks, and they're facing off against, the Leopard tanks. Now, when you're looking at the Sherman with its top turret, where it's very maneuverable and the turret can traverse all the way around the superstructure, that's one thing. But a lot of the Leopard 1s and the original Leopards were literally less tanks and more mobile recoilless rifles, or mobile artillery pieces, because they didn't have turrets that turn like we know now. The whole tank had to turn. So to drive those was very interesting. They had to stay mobile, otherwise they couldn't maneuver the weapon on a turret. That was changed as well. So at the very beginning, when they're talking about the chieftains and centurions and the advent of the Panther, yeah, that was pretty much straight on. They were turning the superstructures because they didn't have the turrets. That was quickly changed too, and we're going to see that coming up. Scary stuff, because once the Germans figured out how to build a really good turret and then armor it the same as they did with their original Panther style, at the advent of the Tiger, and then the King Tiger, which was literally a bunker that could drive. Wow. Nice. I'm assuming that this is the one that is coming out with them. It has a more modern look than the ones from World War II, and that could be because it's the new Class 9, the highest rated. This looks more like a Challenger, Centurion, or a Panther style after World War II than World War II style. Could be completely wrong, but at the same time, the way that the turn is sitting so low, the transverse, the angles of the armor, and this caption in the back where we hold gear, even the tank tread stylings and the lights and whatnot, this lends to more of a modern style of tank, which is completely fine. The only reason why I'm saying these things is because I spent a lot of time around these guys. No, I was not a tanker, but when you do medical support for armored divisions, you see a lot of them. So let's just continue. I just want to see if we're going to see a Tiger at all, or if they're going to face off. Is that what this is over here? I have no idea. Let's check it out. Yeah, you don't see that very often. A tank moving that fast and another tank shooting it and it taking air. You don't see that very often. Ooh. They're just showing different models, from the super light tanks to the mediums to the super heavies. They showed one that was super fast. Got flipped. When you're playing World of Tanks, and I played a little bit, it was quite fun. You had to decide which tank you were going to be. Were you more of the scout tanks, which is like this little one you see, super fast? They run in, they shoot, they get out. But to one-on-one tangle with something like a Tiger or a Panther II, or yeah, you were at a disadvantage in gunpower, but firepower, but you had that speed, agility. So they're just showing all kinds of different tanks which is interesting because some of these tanks that they're showing were advantageous at the beginning of the war, and then towards the end of the war, and then after World War II, you start seeing modern innovations in targeting and the way the armor's placement. They're just showing a good mix of everything, which I think is awesome. Yeah, that wasn't going to go very well for them. Wow. Look at the decorations. The SABATON scrolling on there. Wow. So I guess that's the new tank. Look, Tina putting her cello away as she's walking out. That's pretty cool. That's cool. I don't know why they want to, remind me of the Bismarck. My first ever SABATON video. My greatest SABATON defeat. It's okay. I loved it. And I know a lot of you did too. My name is OldSkuleNerd. And there's two things that I absolutely love about SABATON. Great power metal and amazing storytelling. Historically speaking, they're hitting all the buttons, because you're talking about, wargaming.net, who does exhaustive research on how they represent historical battle machines, whether it be airplanes, warships, and tanks like this, and SABATON that loves to tell great stories about it. My name is OldSkuleNerd, and this one was amazing. Please play it in October. Please play it in October. They might. Who knows? That's the problem with SABATON. They have so many songs You never know what they're going to play. Technically, as much as I can't wait to see Judas Priest, if Judas Priest can't play and they just tell Sabaton to play a double set, I would not be upset about that at all.